Hello and welcome to Going for Two, where we never kick the extra point. It has been a long time since we have been on here, but we are finally back, much like one of the men we're going to talk about in a little bit today. But first, we're going to talk about some of the things that happened since we were last on here. The NBA draft was one of them, and I think Zion Williamson is probably the most slam dunk number one pick in the NBA since LeBron. From bell to bell, end to end this season, he was the clear-cut number one pick. For an NFL comparison on there, I think Andrew Luck is probably the closest thing to a Zion Williamson we've had, who from end to end was the biggest hyped quarterback prospect. What would you think?
Yes, probably Andrew or maybe Peyton. But as we was talking earlier, it's hard to separate the careers they've had with and not have it influence what you thought at the time. But Peyton certainly was one of those.
This is very true. A secondary thought I had was that as far as Zion's pure athleticism, I think Cam is probably another pretty apt comparison in that physically he's the most similar to Zion quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, that's true.
But moving on to one of the big points of today, we're going to talk about a video here on the channel, Kickoff Commentary, that got pretty popular. 58,000 plus views and counting. The video about Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. A lot of people like it. Some people didn't. That's fine. I'm glad people saw it. I had a lot of criticism about Dak himself that I'm fine with. I had a lot of Eagles fans telling me Dak is bad, which I'm fine with. Hey, thanks for the view. I had a lot of the old heads tell me that Eddie LeBaron was pretty good, so that's a name you're not hearing very often. But
haven't heard Eddie mentioned in a while.
Yeah, pre-Don Meredith there. Oh my goodness. But one of the biggest sticking points in that video was a few minutes section, part 7, Dak versus Troy Aikman. And I, in that section of the video, do talk a lot about how Troy Aikman is good. I say he's great a lot, but I do disparage him a little bit in saying that Prescott has got him beat in a bunch of statistical categories. And I do use some pretty, I admit, inflaming language, like when I say that Prescott is going to blow the doors off of Aikman's statistics at the end of his career. And with 1 ring, Dak, if he keeps it up, is going to be better than Aikman with 3. So, why are the 90s Cowboys fans going to kill me again for this one?
Well, I did listen to the video. And there was some language there that, kind of would rile you up if you were a 90s Dallas fan and Troy was your man, which, let me just state for the record, I think Troy is the best all time.
That's fair. I understand.
So I'm going to be coming from that point of view.
And I get that, and I did try to kind of undercut some of that throughout the video on multiple occasions, saying that Aikman is great. I think he's great. I understand a lot of that. But overall, was there anything that you really took issue with as far as my statements on that section of the video?
Well, not really. Assuming now that your stats are correct, and I assume that they are.
I'm pretty sure that video had a lot more work than those 18 minutes showed. Those stats are all either pretty much correct or at least very close to it.
Okay. Frankly, I was surprised at the numbers. I remember the winning Cowboys of the early 90s. And so in what I remember about Troy was his accuracy, but come to find out when we look at the numbers, it was really just that 1 year that he was exceptional.
And that's the thing. Aikman was never inaccurate. That's not the point I was making, but only 1 season of his career was he legendary. 69% completion in the mid-90s is unbelievably impressive. That's why I mentioned
really
that.
Good.
It's hard to... I don't think any quarterback in his era, outside of obviously the Marinos and the guys that can barely touch him, put up a season that was just that truly accurate. However, the picture that Aikman has painted is of the great games. The problem is you were usually getting about 12 of those great games a season because I was surprised he only gave you 16 games twice in his career.
I didn't remember that at all, and there's another stat that surprised me. Yes.
His durability obviously was a bit of a concern, but overall, I still think he was a great quarterback. Like I said,
I do too.
The point I made against him was never to disparage Aikman. Disparaging a 3-time Super Bowl champion is not something that should be done or is easy to be done. I'm just saying that Dak Prescott has a lot of elements in his career up to that point that I think show that numbers-wise, he's going to have Troy bested. However, as many have stated, it's the stuff in between those numbers that Aikman brought to the table. That's why those Cowboys were so great.
So as I said, assuming those stats are right, and I believe they are, Dak is remarkable in these first 3 years comparing to Troy. The numbers don't lie. He's doing very, very well and could conceivably be the best all time. Now, having said that, I'm still a Troy man. And so I guess if I look at those numbers and say, well, how do I still say Troy's the best? I guess it comes down to winning Super Bowls. It comes down to having the respect of just about everyone as being a leader and a field general, and although sometimes that term is used in a not so great light.
That's true.
But someone who is able to command respect and win. That's where it comes down to. So Dak, with his numbers, what's he need to do? Well, he needs to win. They need to win, and if he will do that, then the argument can be made later. But for me, right now, it's still got to be Troy, and 3 rings. Should have been 4, maybe more. But
well, let me set something here, everybody, because this is something that I do need to point out. I had not seen, because it's almost impossible nowadays, Troy Aikman's career in any way without the lens of history upon it. Never seen him play in action, just seen the highlights and the football lives and the documentaries and the history and everything like that. And that's great. It adds to a player's legend, and you keep learning about them. However, NFL Network has this great thing they're doing now, where they'll play full replays of old football games. And I got a chance to watch the 1999 season opener, Dallas Cowboys, Washington Redskins. Now, those teams obviously were not Super Bowl winners anymore by that point, mainly because Chan Gailey was the head coach, and that's a very different video to talk about Chan Gailey as the Cowboys head coach.
Yeah, let's not go there.
But Aikman was still there, Emmett was still there, and Michael was still there. And something you saw there, Aikman had the pocket presence of a guy that had won 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
The final drive there, everything was, you could tell he knew exactly what to do and beyond. Every pass to the outside, to the outside, to the outside. The first pass on this drive he throws to the middle of the field is the last play before the 2-minute warning. He knows he's going to get a clock stoppage no matter what. He's finally willing to push the middle of the field on this. He's moving around. He's moving his guys around. Emmitt Smith doesn't take the field until about halfway through the drive because they're running plays for the backup running back. By the end of it, Aikman makes about the only truly bad throw I see there that the Redskins knocked down. And at that, he knows exactly what he's got here. He got away with one. Next throw, he goes straight to Michael Irvin. Touchdown. Cowboys tie the game back up. Then it goes into overtime. They get the ball, and Aikman runs just a classic play action. Rocket Ismail goes deep, and Troy unloads a hose of a throw that goes about 60 yards in the air, and they win on that first play. It was truly interesting to see Aikman in the context of the time, and honestly, now I get it. Having actually gotten a chance to see him play as he played, it's clear to see why this guy is so revered.
It's just, you watch a guy and you just get this feeling, this is a winner. He's going to win this game. He's going to do what has to be done to win this game. And you can be said about the other players on the team as well, but especially the quarterback.
I think so. Another thing in Aikman's favor was something that was mentioned in one of the comments on the video, and that was that Aikman's greatest early achievement has to be surviving the beatings that Jimmy sent him out there to take in 89 and 90, and against teams I had not really considered. The Redskins were winning Super Bowls at the time, the Giants were winning Super Bowls at the time, and the Eagles were not winning Super Bowls at the time, but Reggie White and Mike Golick and those defenses were just beating the tar out of everybody in the division. I mean, he got body bag games and everything like that. And Prescott, despite maybe one game in Atlanta where he got sacked 6 times off the same edge, never had to take just the sheer volume of destruction they threw at Aikman those first couple seasons.
The first 2 seasons were rough, I have to say, rough for Troy.
And he came through it. I mean, number 1 overall pick, and honestly, to Troy's credit, he's lucky he played when he did, I think, because I don't think a quarterback would have been allowed to suffer as much as Aikman did in those first 2 seasons and come out the other end and still be the starter because it moves too fast nowadays. So one thing I do want to bring up, though, about Prescott here is that it's said that it's unfair to compare the statistics because that Dak plays in a more passer-friendly era. Now, I do think that some of that is fair because, as we said, the hits were a lot more jarring in that day. But overall, Elway was putting up numbers, Marino was putting up numbers, Troy's yardage stats are a little bit lower than those guys still. So what do you think about the different passing league era argument for Aikman and Prescott?
Well, you look at those other quarterbacks, and I think that you probably have to say it's the team around them they're able to put up those kind of numbers. And so if you don't have that team around you, it's hard to put up numbers. Having said that, you expect a great quarterback to be better.
And someone else did make a great point in that probably Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, those kind of guys probably do have better yardage tests than Aikman too, simply because the league has become more passer friendly. It
is a different league.
And that's entirely true, and I do get that. And Troy did have a lot of things going against him in that regard, and it probably does heavily skew his numbers. So someone brought up the point that if you put Troy Aikman on Dak's teams today, he would blow Prescott's numbers out of the water. Do you have any commentary on that point?
Okay. Okay. I tend to think, yes, he would. Just for the very reason that we've been saying, if the game is different now, I think that he excels in this league. I think he puts up great numbers in this league. Even maybe with that same kind of team around him the first 2 years, it's going to be easier to get those yards.
Well, really, I think it's fair to say, obviously you can argue better, worse at particular spots, but basically this team is what Troy had in 92. He's got Ezekiel Elliott is the Emmitt Smith of today's game, the all-around running back who's the best in the league. Amari Cooper at times is the playmaker.
Yeah.
The difference is Michael give you 16 games, Amari gives you maybe 9. In Oakland, that was the knock against him. Amari had some drop problems.
Yeah.
He recovered from that in Dallas. The O-line, I mean, it might be better than those guys Troy had for him in 92.
It could be.
And the defense is pretty good. There's no Dion out there, but that Van Der Esch kid, he's one of the he's a bit of a monster out there.
He's a full-grown man.
Exactly. And so I think it's very possible. And Aikman's build really is good for today's game. 6'4", tall
Sure.
guy, moving around in the pocket. I think it's comparable to an Aaron Rodgers type, possibly, if he were running the Cowboys offense.
Yeah.
But I want to add one more thing in here that's very important. Troy Aikman never had to deal with a man named Scott Linehan. And I think that would have hurt him. I think that if Aikman were in this situation, first 3 seasons, he may not win a Super Bowl simply because I think Scott Linehan was that bad. I'm going to spin that really quick on a bit of a tangent here, though. If you put Tony Romo on the 1990 Dallas Cowboys, do they still win the 3 that they win?
Interesting. That's interesting. I'm a Romo fan also. I really appreciated Tony. I just think that he is a great quarterback. I'm not sure that I can say that he would win all 3, but I think he gets a Super Bowl, definitely.
I'd be willing to say it's very possible with how his career arc projected at the end, where he got so much better.
Yeah.
He might have won one that Troy didn't at the end, simply because of how refined he made his game by the end of his career versus the middle and the beginning. So we have one guy here who said that if Aikman had played on a passer-heavy team in those 90s, he would have obliterated every NFL passing record. I don't think I can get behind this statement simply because of the length of Troy's career wasn't as long as Marino and Elway, who both played 5 more years than Troy did, but also because I don't think he would have obliterated them. I mean, Aikman's got good numbers, certainly, but he's about 30,000 yards, I think, behind Marino. Even if he was on a pass-heavy team, he might catch him, but there's no way he obliterates them, I don't think. What is your take on that?
No, that's a little bit of an overstatement. Obliterate, no. Could he have been comparable? Sure.
I think that's fair to say as well. Yeah. Now this one, I don't like to say it, but there may be something to it here, who said that the reason that Dak is already so close to Troy Aikman in come-from-behind fourth-quarter game-winning drives is because Troy would get us ahead of the other team in the fourth and then just hand it to Emmitt Smith, run that clock out, and be done with it, whereas Dak sometimes will put us in a position where we need to do that. Now, again, until I see him play, I'm going to blame most of that on Scott Linehan's bad play calling. It's not one-dimensional, it's 0. If you can stop us, you're going to stop us, and there's no adjustment until Dak has to do something. But I will admit, there's some times where Dak Prescott takes a 13-point probable lead, makes it into a 6-point lead, and has to save it at the very end. What are your thoughts on that take there, that Troy was better at holding us into the lead into the fourth quarter?
Well, it turned out that way, at least in his career, because one of the hallmarks of those early 90 teams was exactly that. They would get out ahead, and when they got the lead, they did feed Emmitt, and Emmitt was up to the task to keeping that lead.
The 20-plus touchdown seasons in the mid-90s certainly speak to that story.
Yeah, because when you're handing it to Emmitt all the time, you're not throwing touchdown passes. So,
and that's why Aikman's touchdown totals are a little bit lower, even in that 69 completion percentage season, because their plan for those seasons was to hand the ball off to Emmitt Smith.
Sure.
And I think Dallas would do well if we can actually get some touchdowns going with Kellen Moore as OC early, and Elliott could put up a season like that. I think it's possible. I think Zeke's talented enough to put up an Emmitt stat-like season, certainly, overall. As long as he can keep himself on the field for every game, but that's, again, another topic for an entirely different video there. Stay on the field, Zeke. So somebody mentioned in here that they thought that the reason that Troy's numbers look worse than Prescott's is because Troy was more of a gunslinger than Dak, who was a bit more of a game manager type. I don't think that's entirely the case. I mean, he certainly would go to the deep ball more, but I don't think that he's significantly more Favre-like than Dak is. Do you have a take on that?
I don't consider him Favre-like. Did he push the ball down the field? Absolutely. Could they do that? Absolutely. And so part of what made that running game so good was there was a threat to the outside. You had to account for Aikman throwing the ball. And so
to this point, I think it's fair to say that Troy has, from what I've seen, has the stronger arm. I mean, Prescott has some good deep throws, but the throw that I said Aikman made in '99 after injuries had set in some to Ishmael is better than any throw I've seen Dak Prescott make. It's a wrist flick that goes up at the end, 60 yards, and hits him right in the hands. So Troy had an absolute cannon to throw the ball with. That's certainly something that works into his favor.
And it kind of seems that Dak has at times fallen into that game management mode.
I certainly agree with that. Quite simply, I think, again, until I see a season with that, I'm going to move some of that on Scott Linehan. His play calling does Dak no favors. The double reverse toss to the tight end in the playbook. I mean, they ran a screen pass, I think it was in the playoff game, on the 1 yard line on the wrong side of the field. Outside of taking a knee for some sort of strange punt field position, a screen on your own end zone is not a call that anybody makes. In Madden, they tell you not to make a screen pass on the goal line on the wrong side because it's a chance for a safety. I mean, Linehan just didn't ever seem to have any idea situationally. And I noticed every time we would go up tempo at the end of the 2-minute drills of the halves in the games, when Prescott was freewheeling out there making his own calls, the offense ran a lot more speedy-like. I don't want to make this comparison, but it ran more like a Mahomes air raid college type of offense. Now, Mahomes has better arm talent than Dak does, just plain to see. But I think Prescott could work well in a quicker offense like that if he needed to. But I think, as I said, they're going to try to do that some more in the first half and then let Elliott do the Emmett role to finish off some games, which I'm completely fine with.
You bet.
To kind of put a closing capper on this one, though, from a lot of what I've heard from the analysts who were there at the time that are watching the camp this offseason, the Cowboys have had a pretty great camp, as I heard. 100% attendance so far. Everybody has shown up for most of the camps, and what I've heard most of all is that Prescott has kind of taken control sort of the guy. He's being more of a leader, he said himself. He feels like he's taking bigger responsibilities. He's getting on guys harder than he needs to, and some guys he's letting a little bit off of on them when he needs to. And from everything I've heard and from what I've seen, what number 4 is doing this offseason sounds a little bit like how number 8 used to run his locker room when he was in the 90s. And if Prescott has taken a step in that direction, I think that a Lombardi trophy could be in the...
I think that bodes well for the Cowboys if that's the case.
And if Prescott can be, I mean, even in that tier, I think he's got the talent around him and the talent on himself. I don't see why it's impossible this season, because I think the NFC is wide open enough to where the Cowboys could have a chance. And now we pivot from the serious football discussion to something that is straight out of an Onion article. The juice
Oh, no.
is loose. O.J. Simpson,
Juice, say it ain't so, Juice.
almost to the day of the 25-year anniversary of his chase in the white Bronco, created a Twitter account at TheRealOJ32. If you don't see it here, then I didn't say it. It's his biography. What can we even say about the fact that O.J. Simpson has a Twitter account?
No, I don't know. But more than that, what he said on the Twitter account.
Oh, we'll get to that in a second, but I'm going to save that for a minute because this is not something that you can just put out there with that first bit. So let's backtrack a little bit ways. All the way back to the ancient times of the 1970s, where this man ran for 2,000 yards in a 14
times. Well, that's me, I guess.
in a 14-game season, 2,000 rushing yards, very impressive. Now, I hate to put you out there like this, but when you were younger, the Juice was your guy, wasn't he?
Listen, O.J. Simpson was the reason I started watching football. It was, I guess, it was that season, the 2,000-yard season, when I really started paying attention to football, and I was the biggest Buffalo Bill fan and O.J. fan specifically. He was the reason I watched football. It was the reason I started watching football, at least.
And I get that. And, everybody has the my pick was certainly not much better, because the guy that I started watching football because of was Michael Vick. And, well,
Mike had his own troubles.
Needless to say, we both picked a player that had some demons that kept them off the field, or not keep them off the field, but kept them their legacy a bit in tatters. Michael certainly recovered from that. O.J. Simpson has certainly not recovered from that.
No.
So O.J. Gets out of jail on parole for reasons that we will not be going into on this video in 2017. And not much information has come out since then, other than he's no longer in prison. But OJ returns to Twitter and puts out this first video, because he doesn't actually tweet it, he puts out a video, which is fine, Twitter does allow that. But in his first video, OJ says it's yours truly, and he's people have had this platform for so long where they can talk about him all they want and he can't respond to it, which, OJ, that's not just you, that's pretty much everybody in the social media era.
Yes.
But then OJ drops the bomb on us that he's got a little getting even to do. OJ Simpson has got a little getting even to do.
Oh.
The joke writes itself. I mean, what
Can you not see how bad that sounds?
I mean,
I don't understand this thinking.
I mean, last time OJ had some getting even to do, most people think he got such a trial for it. The second time OJ had some getting even to do is probably the reason he was in jail at all over the whole Heisman Trophy thing. He's been tweeting since then, and after that first one, he seems to just kind of be going along normally. He sent out a tweet about fantasy football. He's tweeting about all kinds of normal things, and it's very jarring to me that his takes are just there, and he seems to just be putting out takes like any retired NFL player, but he's OJ Simpson.
He's OJ Simpson.
And so I don't...
Oh, no.
Will you be following OJ on Twitter?
I won't be following OJ on Twitter. No offense, OJ, but I won't be following you on Twitter.
So, this is a kind of a part of it. Do you think that the Buffalo Bills are pleased that they're one of the accounts that OJ follows on Twitter?
I can't imagine. I cannot imagine they are.
Now, the Bills are one of his follows. I believe the NFL is, the PGA, the Heisman Trophy account. I believe he's following his son, which...
Well, okay.
That makes sense. But there was a person on... There was a couple people on there that I don't know who they are. I don't think they're... Unless they were related to the trial that I don't remember a ton of the names from. But I think there are a couple people on there that aren't related to the trial or OJ's family. And if you're those people, your life just probably got a whole lot more nervous, didn't it?
I would think so.
So OJ, if
you wake up one morning and OJ is following your account,
and he's got a little getting even to do. OJ, if you're listening out there, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I might follow you on Twitter, certainly. And third of all, please don't get even, OJ. You gotta turn the other cheek on this one, my good sir, and then just let it be. But enjoy Twitter. I hope Twitter enjoys you back, OJ. To bring today's episode to a close, I would like to bring it back to Sunday, where NASCAR announcer Darrell Waltrip called his final race in his 19-year career as a lead analyst for NASCAR, always calling the Fox portion the first half of the season. The first race that he called is probably the most famous NASCAR race, unfortunately, of all time, the 2001 Daytona 500, where Dale Sr. passed away. And since then, every first half of a NASCAR season has had Darrell Waltrip. Since the Charlotte race that year, every race has had his infamous boogity 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 call to start every race.
I like Darrell.
Hard not to like Darrell Waltrip, but yes, the race at Sonoma, California on Sunday was his final race as a NASCAR commentator, and they really gave him a big send-off. Multiple cars were running throwback paint schemes to the cars that Darrell used to drive. They had him run a lap in one of his older cars. They brought in several of his former broadcast partners throughout the whole thing. They showed clips throughout his broadcasting career. Really fun. I'm wondering who you think in the NFL, which broadcaster do you think would have the best, biggest send-off in a style similar to what Waltrip got from NASCAR?
Well, you have three that really stand out, of course, with their partners. You have Al Michaels, Jim Nantz, and Joe Buck.
The big three of the play-by-play guys there.
So I'm sure one of those would be comparable.
You know, that's true. Al Michaels, to me, is the voice of the NFL, probably because the Cowboys play on Sunday night so often, but it's hard to hear a big moment without him. Jim Nantz, the same way. Tony Romo, obviously, has elevated them to the front of the line there. Yeah. Joe Buck is a name that I've gone back and forth on. A lot of people probably still don't like Joe Buck as a commentator, and I do kind of understand it, but I think that Joe Buck as a commentator makes a lot more sense to me now as it has progressed as a story, so to speak. Because Buck, for years, I think everybody was like, he's so monotone, he doesn't really rise up to it. But that all changed for me, my perception of him, in the Minnesota Miracle play, the Saints and the Vikings a few years ago.
Yeah.
And his call, it's just, the pass is caught, Diggs, sideline, touchdown, unbelievable, Vikings win it. He's going just as crazy as the fans are almost in that moment. And I think I realized that Buck is pretty great in that when he goes up to the moment. when a moment feels like it is earned, for lack of a better term, his excitement, the moment feels that much more special. Because that call would be great from anyone, but a guy like Gus Johnson, who's always excited, that call doesn't mean as much as a guy like Joe, who's almost never on that level of excitement.
Yeah.
But overall, I hate to see any one of those guys go. Daryl, you were great watching. NASCAR was a sport I watched a lot as a kid. It's going to be weird seeing NASCAR races in the first half that you aren't calling. Troy Aikman, if you see this, please don't hate me. I think you're pretty awesome.
You're very awesome, Troy.
And OJ Simpson, I doubt you're watching this video, but once again, OJ, enjoy Twitter. This has been Going for Two, and remember, never kick the extra point.